Hello everybody, this is the Plastic Commando coming to you today from deep behind enemy lines. Today's video is a continuation video in my series on custom tanks for Axis and Allies World War I, 1914. And of course today we're going to be looking at Italy's tank in World War I, the Italian Fiat 2000. From the get-go, Italy never really was known per se in World War I for armored tanks. A lot of reasons, mountainous territory that they were fighting in, but also they were fairly late in the game in terms of beginning to produce tanks during the war. Pre-war though, Italy was well known for the use of armored cars in engagements throughout the Mediterranean and North Africa. But during the war, Italy did take notice of France and Britain's success in tank production, and Italy eventually did pursue a tank of their own, and this is really how the Fiat 2000 tank was born. It was a 40-ton giant. It was a massive tank that had planned to be introduced on the battlefield. It took a crew of 10 to basically keep the tank operational and movable. And certainly it dwarfed the, for example, the French FT tank by sure standards, given that that was only a two-man tank. So it was a very, very large, massive tank. Had a main gun of, it was a 65 millimeter gun. It was the largest tank gun of the war, actually. Another interesting fact of the tank, like the French FT tank, it actually did have a fully revolving turret, of course, which you can see on the top of the tank itself. The turret revolved around, and actually it was a very modern tank in those standards at the time, again like the FT tank for France. However, mass production never really occurred with the Fiat 2000 tank. It was basically a late approach at trying to design and build and then field a tank during the war in 1918. And actually just only a few were ever produced. So the Fiat 2000 was upgraded post-war and actually did see some service into the 1930s for Italy. But having said all that, it is a very cool tank though, and it will certainly have a presence on the game board. Sometimes though, as you know, in these games that we play, Axis and Allies, you just really have to take some liberty in the approach of maybe using some game pieces, whether it's to add balance to the game or just simply variety. And of course, the out-of-box rules for Axis and Allies World War I certainly have all powers of the tanks, but this is really just going to be adding a bit of variety for Italy in their use of tanks. The historical basis of this tank, though, for war purposes, really is not the case. As indicated, it was only produced in late 1918. Just a few of those were actually produced. So historically, it may never have been a marvel on the battlefield, if you will, but I assure you it will certainly shine on my game board for sure. Just to kind of give you an overview of the tank itself, which of course we've been looking at here while I'm talking on the video. The tank, for starters, can be purchased through Historical Board Gaming's site on shapeways.com. I would certainly encourage you, if you're looking at upgrading some variety into your games, whether it be World War I or even Global 40 or even some of the other global series of games that Historical Board Gaming has as well. Certainly take a look at Doug's website on shapeways.com, Historical Board Gaming, and you'll certainly find a variety. I did purchase these from that site. Very pleased with them. They're fairly detailed. They give a good representation of the Fiat 2000 tank. Of course, again, the main gun, and then of course we've got which may be just a tad bit hard to point to. You can see kind of like what looks like windows around the tank itself. We'll pick one of these up here and maybe give a better representation. Kind of like windows on the side, on the back, and then all the way around. Those actually were gun ports for machine guns, so they're not particularly represented on this model, but again, just for purposes of gameplay, obviously we've got the tank and the main turret. But those windows actually were used, by my understanding, for machine gun ports as well. So it certainly was a tank that was would have been, had the war continued, certainly would have made a presence, and probably would have been a monster to have fought against, again, with the 65 millimeter gun being the largest gun that would have been in the war itself for a tank. The decals which we see here, these are the Kingdom of Italy flag, which I purchased through Combat Miniatures. I'd also encourage you to check Combat Miniatures out. They've got a variety of not only of decals, but also different types of game pieces for your Axis and Allies games. But these are from their decal selection, and I think they do a pretty good job in tricking out the tanks, if you will. I just think they look pretty cool on here. So, real quick, the paint itself it's a Model Master Rust, which I used, and I've essentially converted the Italian Army over to Model Master Rust color. And these tanks, after having been painted, then they were followed up with a Army Painter soft tone shade to give a little bit of shade and a little bit of grittiness to the tank itself. You can maybe kind of get an idea of some of the shadow effects found in the tanks, kind of get into the recesses and spots. And then after the Army Painter soft tone dried, this was followed up with some spraying of Army Painter matte varnish to get any particular shine off the model itself. And then that's it. That's the tanks in the final form, which I plan to introduce for Italy. And I've got 5, and that's all I really plan to purchase for the game itself. I don't think envision Italy having more than 5 tanks on the battlefield, and if certainly do, likely chips will be under quite a few of these. But nevertheless, I think this is a cool addition to the game. They certainly look great, despite Italy not necessarily having these in the war itself. But anyway, I just wanted to bring you the second video of my custom tanks that'll be on the game board, and we'll be proceeding soon to another video of additional custom tanks for Axis and Allies World War I, 1914. This is the Plastic Commando, over and out.